Some of the guys asked me how I made the sliding canopies for the AT-6 Texans that I'm working on, so I decided to go ahead and do a how-to video on how to make these canopies functional. We are going to start with the stock Ziroli Texan canopy, which is what you see here, and we are going to convert this stock Ziroli canopy into this. When you start your canopy build, you're going to want to order more than one canopy just in case you need to use parts off of two canopies, or you scratch or cut something wrong on the first canopy. You have a second one that you can go straight to cut the correct piece out without having to wait for a new one to come. Some of the parts that we're going to need to make the canopy: a couple different sizes of aluminum angle iron, the aluminum flashing, and there's various hardware parts there, 256 bolts and nuts, easy connects, ball sockets, and we're using number 0 by 1/4 inch miniature wood screws, which are basically sheet metal screws. And you can either make your own rails or you can purchase rails. The rails that I have here were purchased from Ziroli. And for the Texan, you need 2 actuators, and what I'm using are the actuators from Ziroli. The Ziroli actuator I'm using is the type L16 with the 100mm stroke, 63 gear ratio, 6 volt, and the R type. This particular one will make it so that you just plug directly into your receiver and it acts just like a regular servo. You can set your endpoints, your throws, your center point, and your speed with these. Okay, so here you can see the stock Ziroli canopy has been trimmed. Not completely, we just cut the ends of it off and the bottom tabs that stick out so that it sits on the fuselage properly. And we're going to use it the way it is right now to make marks on the fuselage as to where to install the forward canopy rails. You can also see that I already have the canopy floor cut out of the fiberglass fuselage. Now we're doing this on fiberglass. Doing this on the wood fuselage would be the same way. The only difference is you would have more notches and cuts to make into the formers for the rails to fit, and you would have to trim out on the inside where the inner rails would go. But we started out and we cleaned out the original subfloor that was in here for the cockpit that came molded into the fuselage. Make sure that when you cut your subfloor out of the fiberglass fuselage, you leave this lip around here. What we're going to do is you're actually going to cut into this lip and then build this up with balsa wood and then soak it with CA so that you have a place to mount the last piece of canopy glass too. Canopy glass will also have to be modified slightly to sit a little bit lower, so you'll see that when we get to that point. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we are going to make some pencil marks on here. We are going to mark the front of the canopy, the back of the canopy, and the back of the center section. We're going to put a line right there. That's going to be our reference. Right here, I don't know if you can see it on the video, but that's going to be our reference line right there for putting in the rail. Okay, now I have done this before, so to make this match the other Texan that I've done already, what we are going to do is we are going to make these marks so that the rail sits lower at the front of the fuselage and higher at the back of the fuselage. So what will happen is when the canopy moves back, it'll ramp up slightly, and so it sits over top of the centerpiece. Now you also want it to come out a little bit, so instead of being flush against the fuselage like that, you'd want it to stick out a little bit. Okay, so I know those distances are going to be so that this rail is flush at the front end right here and about halfway out at the back end over here, and it's going to start with the depth from the top at 9.85 centimeters and go to 8.25 centimeters in the back. So what we'll do is I have my handy dandy measuring tool right here. We have that set for 9.85 centimeters, which is the line right there that I'm making. That's this mark. And it goes down to 8.25 centimeters. So I'm going to adjust this. I don't know if you can see the numbers on here. I'm going to adjust this to 8.25 millimeters. Okay, there's 8.25. So we're going to come back from here. We're going to measure down 8.25 millimeters. Okay, so now my top rail, the top of my rail is going to run right along there. Okay, so we have our marks on the fuselage, one here and one here. So we're going to take our rail and we're going to line up on it. And then I'm going to use these clamps to hold them in place. Now you can mark top and bottom. And these marks will actually be used to cut the fiberglass. So let me get the other side done and I'll be right back. Okay, so I don't know how well you can see this, but you can. I have the marks on there. The rails are outlined so that I can cut them out with the Dremel. And you can see the canopy line that we drew on there when we put the canopy on first is almost in the middle of that rail. Now it doesn't have to be a perfect cut on there because they will be getting trimmed again. And you will also be putting some aluminum on the outside of the forward and the rear canopy section so that they can be actuated properly. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to check the length of the rails, and we'll cut them down, and then we'll get the rails opened up so that the holes opened up so that we can start installing rails. When we go ahead and measure these rails, what we want to do is we want to stop the rear end of the rail at the last mark, and I want to go forward past the canopy section. So up here, this will actually be inside the fuselage, so that it'll be easier to get your actuator, the sliders in and out. So I'm just going to go ahead and mark it right there. What I'll do is I'll take my rotary, my Dremel with the cutting bit, cut that one off there. I'll take the other one, I'll match it, I'll cut it right there. We'll go ahead and get those holes cut in, and then we'll go ahead and get these tack glued in.